And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think? Do I have a career as possible ring?
Don't quit your day job.
You know what? I'll take it. But I was also thinking about doing like a 1920s announcer, like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome
Oh yeah,
to.
see,
Yeah,
you want to
yeah.
be famous, Martha. You want to be famous.
Yes, but hey, I'll take your advice and keep my day job. But for the listeners out there, welcome to the first episode of Combat Life. I'm your host, Curran Jacobs, and I have here with me none other than Randy the Natural Couture himself, aka Captain America. How the hell are you, brother? How you been?
I'm doing good, man. Staying busy. It's been good though.
Yeah, it looks like it. Looks like you're up to a whole lot.
Yeah,
So,
chasing the dream as always. Coming off of an amazing year last year with 5 films. That's the most I've ever done in a single 12-month span. And the culmination of that was Expendables 4. So pretty amazing year. Did one this year called The Bellkeeper. That was fun, supernatural thriller, and then just had to go do some pickup scenes for Expendables 4 with 50. So that was an experience. Of all the films I've done, I've never had to go back and do a pickup scene like that. But they explained it to me and why they felt like the scene was really important to connect some dots and fill in some things with the plot. And so I was like, okay, I'm in. Let's do this. And yeah, it was fun. 50's a great guy. I really enjoyed working with him. That's the second film I've done with him. I did one years ago called Setup, actually, in Grand Rapids. Cold as hell. 12 degrees. We're shooting this fight scene in this alley, man. And you'd run from the heater to do a take and then run right back to the heater.
yeah, so yeah. Oh, it's freezing. It's freezing now. We lost heat last night and had to sleep in a tundra. Oh yeah. Oh, that was an adventure, my man. But we got that back. we got that up and running, thank God. But yes, speaking of Expendables 4, my brother, I saw that Mr. Stallone said he's returning to, the R rating, the good
yes,
action-packed stuff we saw in 1 and 2. I know,
that's a long story. They kind of wanted to shift to PG-13 for 2. And there was a little contingency getting Chuck Norris. Chuck is a very strong Christian, loved the movies, loved the property, but kind of wanted it to be PG-13 so we could watch it with his kids. And so in 2, we did takes for both an R-rated and a PG-13 rated. And then at the end of the day, Sly said, "The hell with that. We're doing R-rated."
Yes.
And kind of pissed Chuck off, frankly. But it is what it is. And then the producers decided going into 3 that all these young kids were buying tickets to other movies and sneaking in to see the Expendables. They wanted those ticket sales. And so they decided in 3 to make that one PG-13. I think that hurt it a little bit at the box office. It was a little softer version of the Expendables in some ways. And the big issue with 3 was it got hacked about 3 weeks before it hit the theaters. It showed up on the black market and really hurt them financially that way, which I think was why there's been such a big gap between 3 and now getting involved and getting 4 in the can. So interesting there. And yes, we're back to the R rating, which I like. I think it's a throwback to that gritty 80s type action, and it's really tough to do that in PG.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's why 1 and 2 were so successful, is because everyone went in there expecting that badassery, and they got it. I mean, it was heavy hitting, sweet as hell. And you just brought up something, that you see memes about it all the time of kids in the 70s and 80s, dirt on their face, scuffed knees,
Yeah.
And that brings me to the major topic today, which is mental toughness. And that's something, that's displayed in the films, with you portraying Toll Road, with all those other legends. It feels like that warrior spirit, that warrior mentality, the courage it takes, to enter battle like that, specifically the cage for you, and to overcome adversity. It makes me think of your match in UFC 74 when you faced Gabriel Gonzaga, and you threw your hands up to block a kick, And didn't he kick your forearm and snap that bad boy in half?
Yeah. He broke my, had a nightstick fracture of my radius, the smaller bone in your forearm. And the first 10 seconds of the third round, he came out and threw a big head kick. And, his previous fight was against Mirko Krokop, and he kicked Mirko in the head and folded him up like a cheap lawn chair. I definitely did not want that to happen, but it was very quick. I got one hand up. I didn't get them both up, and I felt it. But at the same time, in the heat of the moment, with that adrenaline going, I got to the clinch, which is generally where I like to be, and
absolutely,
I could feel it clicking. And I thought, that doesn't feel quite right, but you still, you're in the heat of the moment. I managed to take him down, and then within the next, I think, minute, kind of pounded him out and finished the fight. So then I'm thinking, I'm elated, I'm happy, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's just a bone bruise, maybe it's not broken. And so I go across the street from MGM to New York. I have a big autograph signing and an after party after the fights. And I'm standing there in line signing autographs with fans, and my hand is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, damn it, that's not a bruise. That's broken for sure.
That's broken. And that's insane. Like you continue to fight. You got him up against the cage, the legendary Greco-Roman clinch that you developed throughout your career, and you come out on top of the victory. Most people, the freaking broken arm is going to stop, complain, with an injury like that. But not only did you deal with it, you came out with a victory. And, it just brings me back to kids nowadays. And I know every generation is like, these kids.
Yeah.
These kids, like,
well, you're seeing it firsthand. I mean, you're in the schools every day, as a day job as a teacher. And man, I can't imagine. I have a lot of friends that are teachers, and they're scratching their heads and they're shaking their heads like, man, what the hell is going on in our society right now? And
no, it's insane.
I grew up standing on the back seat. Car seat? Are you kidding me? No, there wasn't even a seat belt. I remember getting in trouble coming home from the babysitter as a 3.5-year-old. I'd been hanging out with my babysitter's goats all day, headbutting with them. And so I'm standing on the back seat looking out the front window. My stepdad Marco's driving the car, and I decided it was a good idea to headbutt him from behind. Needless to say, it didn't go over. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And, I got in a little bit of trouble and I was forbidden from playing with the goats from then on. But that's just the way it was back then. We drank out of the hose.
That's crazy. Yeah. How times have changed, and you're right. It's crazy. It's insane. And unfortunately not in good ways. I see kids all the time, like athletes with all the abilities in the world to do extremely well in wrestling, but they just lack the courage to step out on the mat. It's the apprehensiveness. And I see it in adults too, too nervous to step on a jiu-jitsu mat and compete. So what would you tell not only these kids, but adults that may hesitate with fear and doubt to, just have the courage to step out there and give it a shot?
Well, fear comes in many forms. And it's certainly the thing that keeps a lot of us out of that arena where excellence takes place. Obviously, you got to put yourself in a training environment and a practice environment first to develop the skills and the tools. But that fear is always going to get in the way of going out and doing what you've trained to do, doing what you planned on doing when you set those goals. So I see people all the time that limit themselves and their exposure to the world just to limit the amount of fear they're potentially going to experience. That comes in rejection. Fear of failing is the biggest thing, obviously, in athletics that we deal with, but nobody wants to be rejected either. We all want to be loved and accepted. We're wired that way. So it gets, and especially now, and I feel like there were bullies when we were kids too. But when I got off the bus and walked up my driveway, the bullying stopped. Now I feel like with social media platforms and all this, you're carrying around this smartphone with you everywhere. There is no escape from it. And not only is it just that one guy that's the bully, it's that whole group that's also on your platform or on their platform, seeing all that stuff. And there's literally no escape from it. And I think that's a huge issue, and one of those kind of unforeseen connections to how connected we are to the social media platforms that we have. And I don't know if you've seen that documentary, Social Dilemma. It's created by a lot of the people that develop these social media platforms and the unintended consequences that we're all seeing and dealing with on a societal basis. But I think it goes back a little further than that. All of us baby boomers, who had parents and grandparents that came out of the Great Depression and through World War II, where things were rationed and they saved everything. They didn't throw anything away. Of course, things were more serviceable back then too. They weren't made of plastic. They weren't made to be disposed. They were made to be fixed. Right. And there, I think, is where we've kind of taken a big turn. Everything is disposable now, including our families and our relationships. I think we didn't want our kids to go through and go without the things that we went without. And so we've done them a disservice by handing them all this stuff and not making them earn it and not making them work for a lot of those things. And it creates this sense of entitlement, like you're just supposed to get it. It's just supposed to be given to me.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't have to go and earn it. I never wanted to see as a coach that talented guy when I was recruiting. Don't tell me he's talented. That's almost a dirty word, because now I know he's gotten away with not having to really step up and embrace the grind and do the work because of that talent. And sometimes the talented guys at some point are all going to get up to where everybody's talented. Now, how are you going to distinguish yourself from all those other talented guys that have that same goal that you have, which is to what? Be a state champion, be a world champion, whatever that goal was. It comes down to then that work ethic and being willing to outwork any of those people that have that same goal that you have. The talent goes right out the window because everybody's talented at that level. So right. It's having that work ethic. I'm so thankful for my single mother that raised three of us by herself, and there was the chore list, and there was shit that had to get done, and if it didn't get done, there was hell to pay. And you learn that work ethic. I wasn't out a lot of times playing with my buddies in the neighborhood because I had to weed, the front ditch and get the grass mowed, and there was a bunch of stuff that had to be done. As I was the oldest male in the family, and so it fell on me to make sure the chore list and all that stuff got delegated or got done, and that was the way it was. That was the only way the family was going to get everything needed. I learned to cook. I learned to iron my clothes. I learned to wash my clothes. There were a lot of those things that I'm very thankful for from that situation. At the time, it seems like, man, Bobby over there has, mom and dad and everybody in place and brothers and sisters, and he's got it going on. And I'm over here, weeding and doing, child labor in some regards. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I'm happy I went through all that. And that's the way it was because I developed that work ethic.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be who you are today if you hadn't. And
I had to come to terms with that for sure. My dad not being around, never paying support, was a deadbeat, and you feel like at some point you're operating on an inferiority complex. Man, I'm not even good enough for my own dad, and that could be an excuse to make a lot of piss poor decisions. I thankfully used that as an excuse to prove him wrong, to throw it in his face, to say, nah, see, you missed out. It wasn't on me, it was on you. And I think, again, I feel blessed and fortunate that was my mindset. I didn't use it as an excuse or a crutch, to do a lot of, other things, terrible things that weren't going to get me where I needed to be. But I get it. I totally get it. And I think at some point I had to look myself in the mirror and let all that animosity and all those hard feelings towards my parents and my dad especially go, because they made me the guy I am. And if I can wake up every morning and look at that guy in the mirror and be okay with that guy, then why would I hold any animosity or negativity towards those people that, good or bad, made me this person, basically, is where I had to come.
So not only did you overcome such personal obstacles, just to live as a human being with that upbringing, not having your dad, but you turned it into something special that made you a champion, that made you, one of the greatest mixed martial artists ever. What would you tell kids that find themselves, in similar situations, or hell, even adults that might
Yeah.
be worn
Yeah.
down over, past, whether it's family struggles or depression or having to overcome these barriers in life, how do they get inspired? Like, how did you find it within yourself to do that?
Honestly, don't know how I did it. I just did it. And I feel, obviously I think I'm probably lucky that I came through it the way I did come through it. And I think at the end of the day, we have to recognize that we can't rely, as shitty as it sounds, you can't rely on anybody else, including your parents. At the end of the day, you've got to step up and take responsibility for you, the decisions you're going to make, and where you want to end up. Now, that seems like a callous thing to say, especially if you're talking about a kid. Kids shouldn't have to deal with that stuff. But we live in a world where this is commonplace. Divorce is 60, 70%. There's a lot of single parents out there, a lot of latchkey kids. They're doing the best that they can do. Can't knock anybody. Certainly, I have a pet peeve, and that's deadbeat dads. Obviously, that's how I came up. I struggled because of that. But at the end of the day, I'm glad I struggled because it taught me how to take responsibility for myself, how to step up. And at the end of the day, it was up to me. Nobody else was going to do it for me. I wasn't entitled to shit. It was going to be up to me to get it done.
And you found the way to do it.
My coaches were very important to me because I didn't have that male figure. My mom was an amazingly strong person, working a couple jobs to take care of the three of us. And those coaches filled that void. When I needed a kick in the ass, they were the guys that stepped up and did that. When I needed an arm thrown around me and a Dutch rub saying, hey, it's going to be all right, they were the guys that did that too. Coach Casepier, Coach McAvoy, Coach Winter, Bruce Burnett, John Smith at Oklahoma State. The different levels I managed to climb up through the sport of wrestling. And that's why I walked on that wrestling mat at 10 years old, to try and get my dad's attention. I'd heard my whole life what a great wrestler he was, what a tough guy he was. And I thought, well, hell, maybe if I turn out, he'll come around. It didn't work. He never saw me wrestle a single match, not one. And I wrestled for over 30 years. He never saw a single match. Now, he did come around when I started fighting. He had moved back down to the lower 48. He was kind of hiding out up in Alaska, working on the pipeline as a welder and doing a bunch of that stuff up there. And it was easy to dodge, paying support or any of that other stuff up there. And then eventually he came down to the lower 48, we're kind of retired from welding and all of that. And we reconnected, and it was a bit weird and a bit strange at first, especially for my two older children. They were in grade school at that time when he kind of popped up out of nowhere, and they didn't know him. And honestly, I hadn't talked to him in 10 years. So it was a bit strange. But at the end of the day, I had to look myself in the mirror and say, hey, you know what? I'm all right. And all the bullshit this guy put me through, he made me this way. So I need to be thankful for that and let a lot of this go and recognize who I'm looking at in the mirror. And, that mindset, putting that frame around that circumstance, put me in the right place to use it as motivation and not use it as a crutch or an excuse.
That's phenomenal.
Framing is everything. Framing is everything. I talk about this all the time with my athletes. You're talking about mental skills, and putting a proper frame around a circumstance or situation can completely change your attitude about what's going on. Everybody asks me when I transition from wrestling to fighting, man, what do you get more nervous for, a wrestling match or a fight? And I'm walking out of that tunnel, going to the cage, smiling, winking at people, pretty calm and relaxed. And people are like, this guy's a sociopath. What the hell is wrong with him? But I was having so much fun. Where in wrestling and on the wrestling mat and having some big setbacks, lost in the NCAA finals twice, lost in, certainly the 92 and the 96 Olympic trials. And again, in the 2000, when I was, especially in 92 and 96, I was the guy they expected to win, to go to the Olympics and win a medal, and managed to lose in that final match. It doesn't get any bigger than that if that's been your goal for that many years. So I've had some amazing setbacks and managed to pick myself up and keep moving forward. And I realized that I was putting way more pressure on myself for these wrestling matches, and way more uptight and way more what I would call nervous. And they're just that term, that frame right there. Nervousness right away implies something negative is going on. Something bad might happen. You're
Right.
nervous about it. Why would I be nervous about a match, a fight or a wrestling match? At the end of the day, I'm doing exactly what I love, where my passion is. Doesn't mean I'm going to win, but there's nothing negative. The sun's coming up tomorrow. The people that really care about me don't care whether I win or lose that match. Again, now I'm talking about that frame I'm putting around that, right? That same circumstance. And it wasn't until somebody asked me that question, what do you get more nervous for, a wrestling match or a fight? That boing, this light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, man, I know why I got on a wrestling mat in the first place. It was the most fun I could have without getting arrested. and I kind of had to get back to having fun on the wrestling mat again and let a bunch of that stress and the minutia go and stop beating myself up for those setbacks, for those losses. And that was the dichotomy of the frame I was putting around a wrestling match versus the frame I was putting around walking out of that tunnel for a fight. I was having a blast fighting. I was learning new skills every single day I trained. I was in my happy place. And that was the dichotomy of this stress and tension I was putting myself under every time I had to walk back out on that mat, because that match was going to determine whether I got to advance and make that Olympic team or make that world team. And I was doing it to myself. Nobody else was doing it to me. I was doing it to myself. So I had to change that frame around that. It's like, no, I'm not nervous. Why would I be nervous? Nothing bad is going to happen. Even if I lose this fight or this match, if that's the worst thing that's going on in my life, I'm doing pretty damn good. And I had to put a new frame around it, recognize what really mattered was those little steps and all those little things I'd force myself to do to achieve that goal along the way. That's where we go away. We forget about that stuff. All the things we learned and achieved along the way to get to that opportunity to achieve that goal. And we forget about that all the time. It rolls off out of their mouths very easily. Oh, I'm going to be a world champion. I'm going to be a state champion. But drawing that map and those small steps that are going to get you to that destination are where, again, people go awry. They fail to draw a proper map. You wouldn't drive from East Lansing to, Ohio without looking at a map. What makes you think you're going to go from where you're sitting right now to that goal without drawing a plan, drawing a map and how you're going to get there? And then put the proper frame around that. There's nothing to be nervous about. This is what you love to do. You're getting your opportunity to show everybody what you've trained to do, what you've prepared for. Doesn't mean you're going to win. And some of my favorite fights are the ones I lost because they forced me to be better. They forced me to analyze what I was doing and come back, not only be a better athlete, but a better human at the end of the day.
You know what, to our viewers who just listened in on this, you just heard this from one of the best to ever do it, to have fun, go out there, compete, let it all go. That's pretty phenomenal advice for anyone who plans on competing at some point in their life. Brother, this has just been unbelievable when it comes to everything that you had to say. You've inspired millions. You're continuing to inspire so many people. Thank you so much for coming on today and giving us your words of wisdom. We know that everyone out there competing for New Weight Combat or wherever they want to compete certainly appreciate it. And thanks again, brother. It means a lot to me, and I know it's going to mean a lot to a whole lot of people out there who are struggling with their own adversity. Well,
it's my pleasure, Curran. I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud of everything you're accomplishing and all the things that you're taking on, walking into that stuff head on and meeting those challenges. It's pretty impressive. I think birds of a feather flock together a lot of times, man. So, iron sharpens iron. So one man sharpens another. We have to be accountable to each other and make each other better at the end of the day. And you've certainly done that with me, and I appreciate you.
Hey, appreciate you. Love you, brother.
You too, man.
Take care.
Be well.